Welcome. We have a very interesting case study today. Thank you to your future self here on Smarties Studio. Smarties Studio is a content hub that brings Smarties Awards to life beyond the stage. It's where the stories behind the wins get told, giving marketing community a deeper look at the work, the thinking, and the people that make these award-winning campaigns. It is distributed through our social media channels to the entire marketing industry globally. These compelling stories that help move the needle of marketing and advertising in today's world.
For the first time in Vietnam, a vaccine brand broke every record, becoming the #1 selling pharma brand, without ever saying the word vaccine. In a country where sexual health remains a social taboo, HPV-related cervical cancer kills 3,200 women annually. 15 years of education, yet vaccination coverage is below 6%. The real barrier wasn't knowledge, it was timing. And when the timing did not feel right, they do not act. So we reframed the conversation to the right time is now. Our idea was simple but powerful. Let her future self become the messenger. A thank you from your future self. 3 lives, 3 aspirations, 1 invisible threat. A single decision today to ensure lifetime protection. The campaign message illuminating screens and billboards to bring the HPV prevention message to millions. KOLs and social media influencers. Doctors on VTV Allo Doctor and creators from Via Cetera's Kong Tsuang Show shared stories, debunk myths, and drive urgency. With Vietnam's first AI-powered HPV prevention experience exhibition, we took prevention to the people. The HPV Risk Control Alliance organized 50 scientific seminars, reaching over 10,000 doctors. The result? 8 times microsite traffic, 39% increase in positive opinion to vaccinate, and a 21% increase in sales from last year, helping us protect more than 1 million women and teens. A beginning of a long-term endeavor towards an HPV-free future, where we all say, thank you from your future self.
With that, I'll welcome Sabi and Chao to this conversation. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Rohit. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having us
Great.
here.
So let's get started, and I think we'll kick off little light. Thank you to yourself, right? It's a very interesting and a very intriguing title. How did this entire title come around, and the campaign, the idea of this campaign come around?
So basically, the whole shift of this one actually started with a diagnosis, not with a creative idea. So we have this sort of a framework called the Delta B framework, which stands for behavior change. It always begins by asking the question, what is the actual barrier preventing people from acting? People know that it exists. HPV existed. The barrier was sort of more of emotional distance, Rohit. The sense that this was the problem for someone else and sometime later. In Vietnam, particularly, prevention categories have also a structural challenge that people act on symptoms, not on the risk. So we had to make the risk feel as if it is personal, more relevant, and not something very statistical or something very abstract. I would say emotional proximity drives action more reliably than rational information. So this actually led to the creation of the future self idea, device, handle, speaking not as a brand warning people, but as a future version of themselves, the people looking back with either gratitude, it could also be regret, but in our case, we wanted to heighten the gratitude aspect of it, positivize it. We all know direct messaging on sexual health creates defensiveness, especially among parents, older women, young boys and girls. So the future self very interestingly framed and sidesteps that entirely. It moves the conversation from morality to a consequence, from what you should do to who you want to be. So that really was a game-changing thing, I thought.
So let's step back a little bit, guys. It's an HPV prevention campaign for disease awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the whole objective about it, and taking a social approach around here rather than a product approach?
Yeah, so Rohit and Sabi, I think it's a great question, and it's actually fully aligned with what we as the MSC is doing. We are not talking about product. We are not talking that hey, you have to do things now, but we have a bigger mission to attend to. Actually, our vision start with for a world free from HPV related cancers and disease. And we do take that responsibilities back to Vietnam, to the country that where we see there is still very limited awareness of a disease that can be fully prevented. So instead of position it like a purely commercial campaign, we treat it like a purely disease awareness campaign. We create a positive certainty through the future. And the campaign wasn't say that you should be afraid of something, but it's more like asking, will your future self thank you for acting today? So that nuance, we do that. We do believe that it's matter most in Vietnam. So we encourage people to see beyond the current situation, to see through their future and to envision how's their life and their loved one to be in the future.
The framework around this of awareness, Chow, if I were to direct it to you, you mentioned, is more structured around the cultural nuance of the market also. So, can you share with us what were some of those shifts that you made of creating an awareness campaign and getting the timing right, if there was a right timing to this?
If people do aware of the disease, but they do not understand it in depth, so they will never taking any meaningful action. And I do believe, and I do agree with you that the challenge is less about explaining the issue, but it's more about making it personally relevant and timely in a way that support their decision making. So in a way that encourage people to take action, but it's not delaying the protection to themselves and their
Now, when we look at this campaign, the framework on the emotional messaging, because it's a sensitive topic, how do you manage the awareness aspect versus the reality of this being there for the consumer?
So there are multiple metrics to measure awareness. First, of course, has to come through all the media KPIs that we set, whether it's stretching enough, whether it's sufficient enough, whether it's ambitious enough. So when we set a very ambitious media KPI, we also ensure that our message, the diligent work of our agency, ourselves, and the meaning behind the message is fully communicated to our target audience, right? We are not doing this alone. We have the support from the entire ecosystem, especially our partner, the healthcare professionals, in order to multiply the impact of the communication message. But I do believe that this is not just the awareness that matter, right? And we do believe that there are multiple indicators that is much more important beyond awareness for us to also pay attention and focus into.
Today, awareness is no longer the problem in the world, right? I mean, people know today a lot more than what any one of us in previous generation knew. There's constant information bombardment happening. Is it quality information? Quality awareness, critical. Second is that is what I call that behavior change question, that aware of what? And it's felt by whom? And in a way that, is it moving them? Is it personally relevant or not? So I feel that marketeers in health categories and broader social categories spend enormous amounts of building awareness. Sometimes it's very generic awareness for things people already know. Behavior change happens when I think three things align. One is that people have to feel personally implicated, not just informed. Second is that they have to see themselves inside both the risk and the benefit, not just the risk. A lot of times, a lot of health comms, they just go crazy about the risk. It doesn't work like that. And they have to have a clear, low friction, actionable, available solution. And this is very critical, that if any one of those three things are missing, then we see in many campaigns that we just get awareness, but nothing else. And the second point, I think that in a market like Vietnam, from my experience, been here off and on 20 years now, is that the trust ecosystem in Vietnam matters a lot more than just media volume. In this market, people are not making any consequential decision based on a single message from a brand or a company. No, it doesn't work like that. So they validate through family.
Given that it is a social campaign, given that it's more about awareness, the success of it really was about making sure that the broader ecosystem came into play, is the point you're making. And if I remember correctly, there were 10,000 doctors that were available for people to go and get the right information. How did this alignment of the ecosystem come along in a market like Vietnam? What were the key nuggets of building that ecosystem for you guys?
I think this is where we proud the most. And it's just a campaign. It's not just a few months that you build it, and then you achieve it. So we have started our groundwork and the connection and on the education to uplift the awareness, the disease awareness, as well as the competency of science engagement and education across the whole ecosystem of the Vietnamese healthcare since a long time ago already. And I do recommend that we are not calling this just a campaign. It's truly a coordinated communication ecosystem. We have to build a strong alignment framework upfront with all the critical stakeholders, internal, external, and we have to identify the very goal of each of the stakeholder before we actually implementing, and then up to scaling to ensure the impact is there with us. So, for example, like the HCB you mentioned, like 10,000 doctors. So it's not just doctor, the nurse, the pharmacist, and everyone involved into the entire ecosystem. They are healthcare professionals, and they have to bring scientific credibility to our communication. Our creative agency and the marketing works, and also medical participation help to increase the relatability, the relevance of our messaging. The media team will help to extend the reach and the adoption, and the interactive experience helps to deepen the engagement. And of course, we have the entire customer-facing team to help multiply the impact of the scientific engagement with our HCP. So we have to engage and coordinate it extremely strongly one with each other across our ecosystem.
So we're talking about a very sensitive issue here, cancer, right? It's not it's scary now, but especially with HPV, given that it's a sexual health disease, there is a certain amount of taboo. How do you make it acceptable uh, without diluting, I guess? So what are the key elements you would say help build that?
I think probably I mentioned that we thought about it as resistance first, Rohit. And resistance is not irrational because it's a signal that message is landing, but in the wrong emotional territory, right? So once we understood that the defensiveness was about morality, not about health, and we could sort of redirect that conversation towards future well-being, family protection, life opportunity, and progress, which is a massively strong value in Vietnamese culture. That is very relevant. Suppose we take the same handle and put it in another culture, another market. Will it be equally effective? I don't know. Second thing was calibrating that urgency. Pure fear-based communication, we know it backfires in this category at least, because it triggers avoidance rather than action. So we wanted to create that emotional tension through future consequence rather than a present threat. That question created the right kind of urgency, awareness, without triggering a shutdown from the consumer. Vietnam is a very emotionally intelligent country as a market and very socially aware. That nuance, I think, made a big difference.
Let me now move on to certain aspects of the actual work happened. It was hugely successful. There was a lot of traffic. There was a lot of conversation around the sentiment of vaccination, if you will. But also, it helped drive some real good growth for you guys from a commercial perspective. And it had a good balance of commercial success and also the public health impact. So my question really would be, how do you measure success when there is both the need for P&L and the acceptance of a social message?
The scale and the ecosystem and all of that. wouldn't have been possible if we would have thought of it as a conventional media, which we started initially. We do as all campaigns, but somewhere down the line, it's big learning has been to start thinking of it as a behavior change ecosystem, quality awareness leading to, and that is still continuing. This campaign did not stop, or this program did not stop that year. It is still building. There are ecosystem is getting enhanced. It's going to the next level. Big learning, I would say. Not think of it as a conventional media plan, but a larger change ecosystem where everybody is playing a role.
I think the campaign along is just one thing, but I would like to also take this opportunity to thank you, our partners, and all of the HCP who joining hands with us, because we are just touching, like the top and the middle of the funnel, but actually our partners and the HCP are the one who actually making this happen, and they are protecting millions lives of Vietnamese. Like for many, many years.
Yeah, and I think at Smarties Studio also, our aim is to create a similar knowledge base, not from a product perspective, but from a marketeer's perspective. And I think this would be very valuable insights to everybody who's listening. Working on this with you guys to actually build that knowledge is equally important for us at Smarties. So now let's kind of divert into yet another part of this conversation towards the end. What originally helped spark this interest of building a campaign of awareness versus product?
Rohit, I think there is a pro and there is a con, right?
Yes.
Sometimes in a challenging situation, it's ignite great ideas. So we are working on a highly regulated industry, and because, like I mentioned, we are the only player in this industry for now. We also have to be responsible to not trying to mislead the consumer, but to have to be very responsible communicator to ensure that people have the right knowledge, the right awareness, and they make their own decision to protect them, right? So we will not saying something about, hey, we are good, but instead we realize that developing country like Vietnam, not many people is protected from HPV and similar disease. So we do see in that by increase significant the awareness of that disease, people will understand the importance of taking that protection as soon as they can. But once they understand how they can help themselves as well as help the people that they love and the people that they concern, we do believe that this will help the entire nation. So that's the motivation behind what we are doing.
In terms
Yeah.
of advertising the campaign and the awareness, what elements of technology were used?
I think with this campaign, because we already undeniably have a wonderful and amazing creative idea, right? And it's touchy, it's motivating, it's relevant. So our job is to think that whether it's one-side approach, absolutely the answer is no, right? So we have to think of a way to make it relevant to our audience. Rather than just a broad communication, we are more targeted behavior change approach. So we focus on relevant life stage and the moments that people most engaging with the content. And we use a lot of tools across our media to really listen to our target audience. For example, like we have different group segment, moms, middle-aged women. We also have a young adult woman. We have males, whether it's young male, middle-aged male. So we have different group of cohorts. And also we segment them small in different behavior. And we create a different communication message, a different visual, different material, and we learn about how they consume media to make sure that they reach the right content at the right moment where they find relevance the most to them.
Interesting. Savvy, you want to add to that from a technology and integration of marketing and advertising?
The technology piece was used across board by the ecosystem, by the people who are on ground, by the HCP professionals, to everybody else in terms of, dissemination of information, to bringing people to prevention measures and doing it at a national level. One of the interesting things, including technology reference point for this, was not the pharma category at all. Actually, it was the financial services, specifically how life insurance in Asia have learned to sell, as I mentioned, to sell emotional outcomes through rational products. And they do not sell the policy. They sell the feeling of being there for your family and not leaving people behind and the future that sort of works out. That emotional architecture maps out almost directly on prevention health as well, almost similar. Traditional technology led thing where the expert speaks and you listen is kind of also losing effectiveness overall in Asia, pretty much everywhere. Consumers, especially urban Vietnamese women, 25, 45, they want information. They also want empathy, self-expression, and the sense that whoever is giving the information understands their life. So that influenced a lot of the tech architecture and the story architecture, the program architecture.
It's very interesting that insights from other industry, financial services and insurance was a key influence of planning this campaign and thinking through what the advantages are. So just to close off on the discussion today, I have a couple of very light-hearted questions for you guys. Looking back in your own careers, what was one of the motivators for you to join marketing?
I remember my decision to switch from FMCG to healthcare. Roughly, I think 17 years ago, right? And that decision of mine is I want to promote something that is good for life, that has a product benefit. And this is still true with me till today. And I'm happy that every single day I wake up, I feel motivated to contribute. I think this is the thing that I proud of the most of my work.
And did somebody influence you?
I remember when I did a brand planning for a soft drinks brand, I'm asking myself, do I want to sell sugar drink for the rest of my life? And suddenly I said no. In the year 2010 something, nobody cares about healthcare awareness. It's like joining that industry, and joining healthcare industry at that time consider was a bold move. So moving from a fancy FMCG world to a so-called boring healthcare industry at that time was really a bold move, and I have never regret that decision of mine for even a single day.
Great, great. Savvy, what was your inspiration to start advertising and marketing?
Rohit, my background has been entirely emerging markets. I found early stage and all the way from my first brief in New Delhi and then Mumbai is that marketing is fundamentally different in these kind of markets versus marketing in a more, I would say, more mature economy. Even in a mature market, you are competing against other brands. In emerging market, you are competing with existing behavior. You are not stealing share. You are kind of building categories that do not even exist. There is an urban set, there is a rural set. Often rural is more than 70% where your consumers are sitting. So, India, China, but it has leapfrogged a lot. Indonesia, Vietnam. So I think that has been really the most incredible challenge that sort of has excited me, where branded consumption has to work so much harder in these kind of markets. We're not even getting into financial constraints, affordability, all of that, which is also there.
Great. So I'm now going to summarize this and try and close it. So thank you from your future self concept has been used for several notable campaigns, and I think the most prominent globally is this campaign Guardsel 9, which is a public health initiative, if you will. It's about preventive health. The primary focus is on taking medical and lifestyle actions today, such as vaccination or wellness planning, so that your older self will look back with gratitude. Overcoming hesitation, the narratives shift. The focus stays away from the present day of anxiety to short term inconvenience, but more importantly, to emphasize the long term peace of mind and protection. That's the campaign we are talking about today. I would recommend everybody listening into this to look at it from their brand, from their project perspective of how you can take and leverage the insights that were shared today and how you can build a more successful, more impactful, deeper conversation with your consumer with regard to the impact of that campaign. Thank you, Sabi, and thank you, Chow, for tuning in today.
But I think what you guys are building with Smarties Studio is something the industry really needs, because I'm saying that with someone who's operating in the market. Institutional knowledge in these markets is really scarce resource today. I think that with the Smarties Studio is extremely important. So I think that's really incredible. All of you, get started.